Our next speaker is a co-founder of Pivot Legal Society, a downtown east side social change organization committed to working on many of Canada's most pressing human rights issues. She currently works as Pivot's litigation director and leads Pivot's sex work human rights campaign. In her 10 years with Pivot, her work has earned her a number of accolades, including, most recently, being named one of BC's top 100 most influential women. And when she is not at Pivot, she is busy working on what she says is her greatest feminist project to date, motherhood. Please welcome Katrina Pacey.
Years ago, when I was 8 years old, this was not possible. Despite their love and dedication to each other, these two women could not join together in a legally recognized partnership. But things are different now, and last summer, my mom and her partner of 30 years were married in the front yard of my childhood home. Surrounded by friends and family, they did what remains a courageous and beautiful act, and that is to be fully and openly in love with each other. And they do so now with the law on their side, and that is change. And I reflect back on my childhood when the word lesbian was mysterious and scary, an insult hurled in the schoolyard, and I think about my daughter and how she tells me regularly and without hesitation that she plans to marry her best friend, Ella. I see her sense of possibility, and that is change. And I'm here today to talk about these moments of social transformation, how we as individuals, as a society, can move beyond difference and judgment to a place of dignity and compassion, and how the law can play an instrumental role in cementing those shifts. So I want to tell you two stories about points in my life when I found myself in spaces of discomfort and fear and uncertainty, and how it is within that challenging unknown that I believe that we find a common struggle, a shared vision, and a commitment to stand side by side. Last September, I woke up painfully early to rush down to Main and Hastings. It was dark as hundreds of people gathered, waiting for a decision from Canada's highest court, which would be deciding the fate of Insight, Vancouver's supervised injection facility. The anticipation was almost unbearable as I thought about the 12,000 men and women who rely on Insight as a place for basic care and community in an inhumane government that has worked exceptionally hard to take that away. And then we heard those two magic words, "We won," and it was totally electric. It was as though there was this giant collective exhale. Insight was here to stay, and as the sun came up, that notorious 100 block of East Hastings filled with the sound of cheering and singing and drumming and laughter. And I thought back to my early days with Pivot 10 years earlier when there was no Insight, when what there was instead was an unsanctioned injection site run by drug users and activists in response to a public health emergency when the government refused to act. I thought about being there night after night and how my commitment to social justice deepened. And I thought about how these spaces are about saving lives and how they transformed mine. Yet we as a society continue to treat drug users as other, distancing ourselves from their struggle with addiction, as though it's not all of our collective struggle. And I thought about social movements and how Insight is the result of courageous grassroots leadership, amazing activism, sound science, even a few principled politicians, and awesome lawyering, representing this huge step forward for drug policy in Canada. And yet we still remain subject to criminal laws that violate our health, our safety, and our most basic human rights. I want you to ask yourselves, are we safer when laws treat addiction as a crime? When laws send people to jail for possession of a plant or for choosing to put a substance in our bodies? Are we safer when governments pour billions of dollars into prisons instead of public schools? We will continue to mobilize, educate, occupy, and litigate until we have struck down criminal laws that violate our most basic human rights and harm the health and safety of all of us, but in particular the health and safety of our most marginalized members of our community. Just as we did last month when, for the first time in Canadian history, sex workers from the downtown east side fought for their rights at the Supreme Court of Canada. I, along with an amazing team of lawyers, have had the great privilege of representing sex workers from this community who are fighting the laws that criminalize their work. But the story of this court case really must begin with DJ, who's one of our clients and one of my greatest heroes. And I want to tell you about a moment on the plane. We were seated, and DJ was sitting next to this really lovely woman, a fashion designer who was on her way to India to develop her new fashion line. And she turned to DJ and asked her where she was off to, and DJ answered honestly, "I'm on my way to court." And the woman looked across after DJ put on her headphones and was immersed in the joys of in-flight entertainment, and looked to us and said, "She's going to fight for her rights, isn't she?" And we nodded yes. And the next day, that's exactly what we did. And as I put on my black robe, I took a moment to think about that fashion designer and the unfortunate aesthetic of my own profession. But as the hearing began, it felt like a million hours of thinking and working and struggle was culminating in this brief moment in time, this moment of incredible purpose and clarity. You see, it had been almost 10 years since I first reluctantly and fearfully waded into the controversial issue of sex workers' rights. When I first began to work in the downtown east side, I did not think I was going to become a sex worker rights activist. But it was the vision and courage of women like DJ that I could not ignore. It was the reality of missing and murdered women that I could not walk away from. It was the fact that the government said that arresting sex workers was in their best interest that I could not walk away. And what an incredible moment to address the court on behalf of such courageous clients and with the strength of Canada's sex workers' rights movement behind us. When we told the court that just like the users of Insight, these women's lives matter. And I want to end with a quote and a few words by Howard Zinn, who says, "The essential ingredients of these struggles for justice are human beings who, if only for a moment, and if only while beset with fear, still step out of line and do something, however small. And even the smallest, most unheroic of acts adds to the pile of kindling that may be ignited by some surprising circumstance into tumultuous change." So to all of you, powerful and passionate people, I invite you to take risks, to refuse to walk away, and to always stand in solidarity with our most marginalized members of our community, and most importantly, to speak truth to power. Thank you.